You ready?
So fast,
That was
yes.
All right, it's Monday, July 6th, 6 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. If you can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alicia, can you do roll call, please?
Yes. Steve Dangelow.
Here.
Corey Miller.
Here.
Ian McDonald. Lori Blargen.
Here.
Tricia Davis.
Here.
Danny Erickson.
Here.
Matt Kukal.
Here. Core values, protocol reminders, and the district mission are all listed. When someone is ready, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented. A motion by Lori, is there a second? Second. Second by Steve, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I did not receive any public comment, did you?
No, sir.
Nobody's here to provide public comments, so we will move to item number 3, reports. We should have some popcorn for this. You'll notice the agenda is a little different. We lump everything together in just report section. So how do you want to run this? Do you want to just go step by step? You want me to?
Let's go step by step. So I think we're all set for item A, for athletics and activities. Troy?
All right, first we're going to talk about, I ran a copy of this. This is what our board president will have to sign when we approve it. Actually, there's a copy for you.
One for everybody.
One for everybody. So we'll have to do it on a computer, Matt, when it's time, so we'll figure that out. I think I can share the link to you and you can just sign off on it. But at any rate, this is all the sports we offer, just like I talked about in the spring. We renew with the WIAA annually. There's no cost to the district to do so. Yeah, I mean, it's our governing body that, runs everything we go by, and we have a good working relationship with, so pretty clear cut. I guess, do you have any questions about it? Like I said, it's just kind of, in the end, it's on digital, and so we'll check those 2 boxes. He'll sign name, email, and we'll submit it, so.
There's no new sports, there's nothing deleted.
Nothing new, nothing deleted, no. 18 sports we offer at the high school level, and we aren't with the WIAA at the middle school level, which 90% of the state isn't either, so.
Questions on the memo?
I have one, not so much about the memo, but is there conference or their, what is that called? It happened last summer. Do they do it yearly where they take public comment? And
Annual meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, every April that's down in Stevens Point. Yeah, so each school can have one representative, well, it can have multiple representatives attend it, but can have one voting member whenever they bring any bylaw changes to the constituents. So you can have there's time for, like say open, where you can, open forum, I guess is the right word, right? Where they can speak, but I get to submit it ahead of time, type of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Very good.
Next. Extracurricular code of conduct, we'll kind of go through it. Highlighted any new changes, and I struck out any, so there'd be a line through anything that we're taking out of it. Just want to slide through on page 2. We have the new term dates at the high school, so that's when we do our grade checks. Midterm semester, pretty clear cut. Page 3 is the middle school's grade check time. Again, it's just based off the calendar when they're, or the middle schools when their trimesters are either ending, or their hexes are either ending or middle of it or whatever works best in their system. So keep on scrolling through. We will go to page 5, I believe. Nothing else has changed prior to that. And actually, I'm sorry, Alicia, will you go up to page 4 where it says conduct? Down, right there. So 1, 2, and 3, major activity code violations, conduct unbecoming of an athlete participant. So that's kind of is one thing, and then 2 and 3 kind of are their own things, and so that's why when you see the changes we made on page 5, this is what we're relating to. So like on page 5, it says, if a student receives a code violation for rules 2 or 3, so we're referring to use of possession or sale of distribution and violations of Wisconsin statute. So if they have a violations for rules 2 and 3, and they already had a code violation for rule number 1, this is going to escalate them to a second offense. What we had in the past was you could get a violation under 1 and get penalized at the first offense. You could get a violation under 2 or 3 and still get penalized as a first offense. So now we're like, well, if you do 1 and now you get into the other 2 categories, this is your second offense total. So hope that makes sense. And then we did the exact, right below it in the double stars is the exact same thing. If you had a code violation in rule 1, and then you proceed to get one in rules 2 or 3, the consequences will jump to a second offense, or second level. Does that kind of make sense? Any questions about that? We just wanted some clarity. We haven't ran into a lot of that, but as we're kind of revisiting all these things, it was kind of an opportunity to kind of clarify that. And just up a little bit, I forgot about the stricken part right there. We struck out participant may reduce their suspension by half of handed down suspension by completing AODA or restorative justice program approved by the activities director, athletic director. That is if they're getting a second offense. We're no longer going to allow them to reduce that. So you can reduce in the first offense to cut it in half. So first offense would be 25%. You can get it reduced in half by, or down to 10% or whatever the language exactly is, in half, I guess. But if you do it again, we're removing that opportunity to have it reduced. Like, we're not learning our lesson, I guess.
So
Kind of
there's
very-
that language about reducing if I have.
Mhm.
I get that we aren't gonna do it a second time, but is that language up within?
Yeah, under number 2 up above, go up just a little bit, right there. Referral to district AODA coordinator for initial evaluation involves the tobacco, drugs, alcohol, and forego. Under evaluation, participant may reduce their suspension up to half of handed down suspension by completing the AODA restorative justice program approved by.
Okay, all right,
So it
good.
is in there, yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to page 6. Similar, right? This was under a different category, but it's still, it's talking about activities now. So the first one is athletics, this is talking about activities. So exact same language I added. If you violate 2 or 3, you already had a suspension or violation in 1, and then vice versa. So that's just under the activities part. New thing we're adding, co-op continuity. So when violations occur within a WIAA-sponsored program operating under a co-op agreement, and Somerset is the host school, student athletes on the team will be subject to the consequences of the Somerset Code of Conduct. This ensures that students from each school on the same team are held to the same consequences. So we felt like that would be a good thing to have in there. We have co-ops, our girls hockey is with multiple schools, and then boys is with one school. And so we thought that it'd be good to have a little bit of unity in that, so that, and then how that can be enforced is I'm going to relay it to the other schools. They don't have to put it in their code, but we're going to have our coaches put it in their handbook, so that when they sign their handbook, they're agreeing to follow that part of our code. So it doesn't supersede their code, so if something happens, that way we're not getting into, we have to monitor their grades, their other things, we're just monitoring in our co-op. Something happens, it's going to, look at our code so it's across the board kind of punishment, consequences. Does that make sense? Cool. Page 7, we just added the word designee, so could be high school principal, could be involved in the appeal process, or somebody who's designated to, and then we did the same thing below that. Page 8, we clarified the appeal process. We didn't clarify the appeal process, we just wanted to make sure that people are aware what it means to appeal. So when you appeal a violation, the length of suspension is not able to be appealed or reduced. So they can't come to and ask to have it appealed to reduce it. they can own, only the fact that a violation occurred, so if they don't think a violation occurred, they want to appeal that piece, or if, that the code was properly enforced, may be appealed. So again, the other language kind of leaves it open a little bit of like, well, let's just appeal anything, or it isn't true. You want to make sure that they understand that that's all you can do it for. Make sense? And then, number 2 down there, in their homeschool, be enrolled in a standalone, home-based. So like, in theory, they're not supposed to be working with other groups, cohorts, and things like that. It's supposed to be their own thing. So we wanted to make sure that was clarified in it. That's it for changes. Any questions on the code?
So my understanding is there are several homeschool consortium-like things where a bunch of homeschool parents will get together and, for example, go to Trollhagen for a day and get a group grade, and it counts as like the FIAD, or I'm not exactly sure how it works. But if they belong to a consortium, does that mean they are not in a standalone program?
That's the way I understand it, yep. But they do sign off on stuff telling us what their curriculum is, and they give us the paperwork, and that's what we go off of.
Okay.
I mean, something like what you're describing could be, you know, like a field trip, right? Like, we can't stop someone from doing that, but, you know, I don't, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
I got a
Hey.
question.
Yep.
Looking at the first memo saying who the sports are, WIA sports membership for that, and then looking at the handbook, what you have listed in 3A, they say they're WIA athletics, and you have dance and cheer listed in there. So are they WIA athletic?
They're
or
not WIAA, they probably could be slid down into a different, yeah. They're not under WIAA, but they are in our code under all things. I think that's more to say this is what we're offering, but yeah, I could see where that's. But they fall into the category of having to
Because
register
they're always
and
heard they're an
the fees.
activity.
Yep.
They aren't a sport, so now you're treating that as a sport in this document, they're not. 'Cause they're
I think the
called-
distinction though, Troy, I can jump in on that, is
Okay.
because they can earn a varsity letter.
Okay.
And the other activities aren't able to, so that
Okay.
they fall into that
All right.
similar classification with it.
So, like, robotics doesn't get a letter,
They do.
and forensics doesn't get a letter?
Forensics did not do letters.
Anyways.
Yeah, that can, I mean, those things could be,
About that, where I've always heard that you treat dance and cheer differently than you do other sports, even though we call it a sport, but it's not a sport, but now it's listed as a WIAA on your code of conduct.
I guess, I'm not sure how we treat them differently, but, yeah, we try to include them in all of our our athletics.
I'll get back to you on that.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Is your computer dead? Oh, just, not kidding.
This isn't committed either.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, I don't have power in it.
Get up and act like they know what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
Always. Oh, that work? Press it harder.
Just keep pressing.
Right.
Yeah, right. Oh. Okay. Oh, well.
I hope they don't all run.
Yeah, let me look at what's,
There's a lot of links, so.
I'll run it back and check the panel when we get the next
Perfect.
thing up.
Anything else?
Get the handbook.
Do I have him? Oh, yeah, what is that? I mean, that's later.
Yeah, that's later though.
My handbook is?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know why.
Not much later.
I'll work on getting it out there, but I do have it from you, yes, so
Do you
that's
wanna cover
my
it quick?
fault.
Since he's standing up
Yeah,
there?
if we want to make amend the agenda.
Is everybody okay if we, since Troy's standing at the podium, we just covered his portion of the handbook?
Sure.
Want to jump ahead, Troy, and just cover it?
Yeah, I have to find, I have to, hold on.
Which one are you covering, just coach advisor?
Just the, yep, coach and advisor handbook.
Wonder if it's
Next one down.
Can you open the link, Alicia?
Well, I linked it earlier, but it's not there.
It might open for me.
Oh, it did?
Off the agenda, yeah?
Why is it not on here then? Because I was like, I did do it, he got it to me, I put it on there.
I'm
Okay,
looking at an
let me
old agenda.
try.
Weird.
Okay, well, that's weird.
It's there now.
Yep, and I did hit
Magic.
refresh too, just a little while ago.
That was a creaky door, wasn't it? Right? It's kind of sound like that. All right, you ready?
Ready?
Whenever.
All right,
Thanks.
so this I do not have a ton of changes to. Again, just a year on that. Otherwise, down to page 6, Alicia. On there, just talk about communication expectation from participants and parents. We talked about notification of illness and injury as soon as possible, and I just added our athletic trainers should be notified as well, where they will track injuries, keep parents and coaches informed on their status. That's been a huge help to us. We pay them for their services, and they do a tremendous job with that. If parents and if students use them, it works really well, but when we don't know about it, then it makes it really difficult. So it's kind of part 1 on the coaches, part 2 on parents and the athletes to continue to keep that communication open. And then cruising on through to page 12. We switched our concussion management program, and again, that's via Westfields and TRIA, who our athletic trainers are hired by. We used to be with impact testing, and now we're using what's called SWAY baseline testing for all students. Nice part is with this, it can test multiple people at a time. They can use, as long as they have a phone or a Chromebook, and as opposed to having to be sitting on a computer. And it's an every other year test, so they don't have to take it every year. And so we've already got most of our fall athletes completed, whereas last year it was a real pain. And so parents would have to get people in and get them out, whereas as long as they become to smart and strength, we've been grabbing them and getting them tested. So nothing's really changed, no financial things have changed. We had to pay a little bit for impact, we pay a little bit for SWAY. Again, this testing is to be administered by our hired athletic trainers. So yeah, that's, they said it's a real good upgrade. It's actually a better test, a more accurate test, so we're happy with that. And then moving on down to page 18, the meal allowance went up to $32 from $30 because the WIAA upped what they reimburse. So that's nothing more coming out of our pockets, it's just that WIA reimburses more, so we will reimburse accordingly. And that's if anyone goes to state, so like a baseball, hockey, soccer, track participants, cross-country participants, wrestling. Okay, moving on to page 19. Coach contact. WIA made a change in 2025, and I realized that wasn't adjusted last year, so we made the change up. Where, as you can read, they can have unlimited, unrestricted days of contact with their kids June 1st to June 30th and July 7th through the 31st. And then they must stop 1 week prior to their start of practices. And so I just updated the verbiage on that. And then following page 20, I just struck out all the language that no longer has any use. So it's just removing all the old language from it. I think that's it, and that's it.
Any questions? All right, thanks.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Thanks, Trey.
Jumping back to B, district reading report.
Mindy could not be here tonight, so she does have a loom where she'll kind of walk you through it. Alicia, you can, 1.2 is sufficient.
Okay.
1.2 on there is fine, as far as being able to listen, and then, if you have questions, just let me know at the end and I'll do my best to answer them. I probably can handle it, so.
Hi everyone, happy summer. I hope everyone is having a great time enjoying the weather. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there tonight, and I'm even more sorry that my camera doesn't seem to be working. I've tried everything I can think of to fix it, and it just doesn't want to work with me. My practice rounds were just fine, and of course, the time I go to actually record myself, it is no longer working. So I apologize that you get to just see this pretty little background, but I am here, I promise you, and I am going to share with you the reading report for the 25-26 school year. Excuse me, this is part of the policy for reading instructional goals and kindergarten assessment. Act 20 mandates that all Wisconsin schools provide science-based early reading instruction in both our universal or our core instruction and also in our intervention settings. All students from pre-K to 3rd grade participate in a universal literacy assessment for reading readiness. Students are assessed using the state-selected literacy screener, which in our case is Ainsworth Plus. The screener includes assessments in science-based early reading foundational skills. Those foundational skills are then kind of defined at the very bottom of this particular letter that I wrote. Under the guidelines of Wisconsin Reads Act 20, all students from 4K to 3rd grade participate in a universal literacy assessment for reading readiness. Students are assessed using the state-selected literacy screener, Ainsworth Plus, and the screener includes assessments in science-based early reading foundational skills. Wisconsin's Reads Act 20 applies to grades 4K through 3rd grade, but all grade levels, 4th through 8th grade, participate in the FastBridge system of assessments for literacy and mathematics. Parents are informed of these assessments and the results at least 3 times during the school year, fall, winter, and spring. Here is a table representing the percentages of students at benchmark per grade level according to our Ainsworth Plus literacy assessments. So at or above 80% for the grade level is always our goal for our overall grade level results. So if you don't already have access to this document, you will. And you will see the table listed there by grade level of the percentage of students who were at benchmark on the Ainsworth Plus assessments. So for 4K, in the fall, we test them in the fall and the spring. We're required to assess them in the fall and the spring. And the first, on the fall assessments, they are not, they don't have the same assessments. So they are not tested on the initial sounds. So we only have a mark of that, or we only have results for that for the spring. But they are also, you'll notice there too that it says the benchmark, the benchmark for initial sounds is 1, so they just have to have 1 sound for the fall. So if students know at least one of those sounds, we are able to consider them at benchmark. So 95% of our students were able to reach that benchmark. So they knew at least 1 sound in the assessment that we gave them. So I apologize, that is the one that we give in the fall. The one that we do not give until spring is letter word sound, which is identifying the letter and the sound. Initial sound is just talking about we give them a word and they tell us the sound that they hear at the beginning of a word. So on that, because the benchmark itself changes, we had 60% of our students in the JK program were able to reach benchmark on initial sounds, and then our letter word sound, we had 86% of our students be able to achieve that benchmark, which is awesome. And we've had many conversations with the 4K, our JK team, kind of on next steps and how we want to work to achieve that goal for initial sounds in the spring as well. So kindergarten, you can see, went from 92% at benchmark in the fall to 93% in the spring. First grade, 85 to 88. Second grade, 78 to 91. Third grade, 90 to 87. So again, those benchmarks shift as the year goes on. So sometimes as those benchmarks shifts, of course, we see different growth patterns in our students. And so we're able to then break down our conversations and talk about individual students and kind of how we can best support them with intervention needed in literacy. So continuing on with the report, the official implementation of Act 20 screening assessments began in January of 25 as required by state policy, but at SES we began in the fall of 24 to kind of get ourselves acclimated, make sure that we had all the right materials, make sure we had a good plan and schedule for that assessment, and we felt really good about being able to start early, have the permission, have the training, and I think it really put us in a good place for when we needed to actually start all of this. So if a student were assessed using all of the required Ames Web Plus assessments and scored below the 25th percentile on a composite of letter names and letter word sounds for kindergarten and oral reading fluency for grades 1 through 3, they are considered in need of intervention and qualify for a personal reading plan. This plan documents the specific skills that are targeted for individual students' literacy needs and displays the progress they are making on those literacy skills, using a specific intervention to support their foundational literacy needs. During the 25-26 school year, there were 92 personal reading plans in grades K through 4 during the fall and winter seasons, and 63 personal reading plans by the end of the school year in grades K through 4. So our fourth graders are also part of the reading plans because the forward exam gets linked in with their exiting or graduating from a reading plan. So that's why fourth grade is also included in the personal reading plans piece. In addition, 8 students in third grade with PRPs were proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam. 5 of these students exited their reading plans by reaching proficiency on the reading portion of the Forward exam. Another 5 students scored in the approaching expectations category of the Forward exam. Teacher teams met about every 4 weeks to ensure proper communication about individual students and their progress toward reaching their literacy goals. Progress is recorded weekly in compliance with the requirements of Act 20. Parents are sent updates every 10 weeks on individual student progress and or any changes to their child's literacy intervention plan. And all of that is sent through EduClimber. Sarah and I created a smart form document or template, and we use that to then forward all of that send all of that information to parents through EduClimber and through their email. So it's very slick to be able to do it that way. Teachers from the Department of Special Ed have reported that their students' population served by IEPs continue to display steady growth in performance on the Wisconsin Forward exam, in reading, and in math. Grade level teams in the elementary school have focused on fluency as a school goal this year and have participated in several meaningful conversations in relation to phonics, fluency, and spelling. From these conversations and the many strategies that they have shared and used to build phonics and fluency skills to support growing readers at all levels, teachers have noticed a need for building spelling skills at all grade levels. Kind of a common thread that we've noticed. We are planning to reconvene in the fall to discuss spelling and how to best support our students in this area of literacy. We also have goals to explore and implement the next level of UFly, Word Origins, from the University of Florida Literacy Institute to continue building foundational literacy skills in our grades 3 through 5. Each public elementary school in Wisconsin is also required per Act 20 to offer summer school support in literacy to students who currently hold a personal reading plan, including including 4th and 5th graders. Our summer school policy has been approved and a letter template to inform parents of this invitation has been created. This program offer is required of us as a public school system, but is optional for parents to have students attend. Teachers who are teaching this program for summer school will be trained in progress monitoring to continue to track the progress of the students who attend summer school, and any update on this progress will be shared with parents when school resumes in the fall. An early remediation plan is an additional requirement of Act 20. It has been written by school personnel and will be linked to the district website. While the primary levels through 5th grade continue to master our board-approved and Wisconsin DPI-approved high-quality instructional literacy resource, Savvis MyView and UFly for phonics, our secondary level ELA educators continue to utilize StudySync as the literacy resource for core instruction. Whole class novel studies further support reading, writing, and speaking work through the middle and high schools. Weekly collaborative department meetings continue to allow teachers to work together to support the use of the materials and impactful instructional practices. Teachers use the resource for close reading and annotation of mentor text, vocabulary development, and assessment practice. Collaborative teams continue to focus on priority standards, intervention, and designing formative and summative assessments aligned to Wisconsin state standards while fostering a love of literacy. Scores from the Wisconsin Forward Exam, ACT, ACT and pre-ACT secure state assessments are available to districts. Teachers and administrators examine and discuss the results of these assessments within collaborative teams and as an entire building to ensure best practices continue to be provided for all students. And again, like I said, once you see a copy of this report, you will also notice that there are just some definitions at the bottom, in case you're wondering exactly what goes into the science-based early reading instruction, and a couple of other things. So if you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me by email, or I believe Sarah is in attendance at the meeting tonight, so she may be able to field any of those questions as well. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me and have me be there virtually to attend, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.
Any questions for Sarah?
Yeah, sorry.
Apologize, that's a good question.
So the benchmarks.
Yep.
You know, for fall and spring,
Mhm.
they change.
They go up.
Yeah.
Right, so, because the expectation is kids are growing over the course of the year, so where they are in the fall, they should be higher in the spring.
So just because the percentage is lower does not mean that fewer kids knew what
Correct.
grade did.
Correct. Yep, the bar is raised as the year goes on.
Okay, and it talked about the Ames Web for, was it grades K through
JK to
3?
Mhm.
So is it FastBridge that we're using for grades 4?
Yes.
Yep. Because I don't think she said that in there.
Yes,
Um,
4 through 8, and then high school uses progress learning.
And so how many, was it 63? It said 4th through 5th, but maybe she's talking about 4th through
So,
5th next
so it'd be
year.
from K through 4, they were 93.
I'm talking about the summer.
Oh,
How
it's
many-
every summer. So the
was
policy
it
was
63, she said in her report that 63 kids K through 4 were on reading plans.
at the end of the year.
At the end of the year, so did that offer go out to 63 kids or more?
Not yet. It is not policy. It doesn't have to go into practice until September 1 of 2027. It was a year ago when we adopted the policy, the remediation policy, and so we chose to do September 1st. Our plan is for next summer to run here's how it's gonna go, so then we're ready for when it's official.
Okay.
So the letter is set, we offer it already through our adventure camp and things like that, so it's not going to be and that's optional, right? So even though the invitation goes out, it is optional. So parents can send their child for that. The biggest difference is going to be the progress monitoring for the 3 weeks, that we don't really do.
So do you have any idea how many invitations were issued at the beginning of summer school this year and how many were accepted?
No, but I bet if I asked Lindsay, we can find out that information.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to say, I did link in the early literacy remediation plan. It is already on our website, so I did link it into the memo, so if you want to take a look at it, it is already out there, so.
And how come the progress is not going to be reported until school starts in the fall? Because they're going to be doing the progress monitoring during the summer session.
I think those are some of the things that we need to figure out, that we would, that might look different, because during the school year, it's 10 weeks, but if we have that kind of time, right?
Right.
In my mind, I see we started, and then here's where they started at the beginning of the 3 weeks, and here's where they ended at the end of the 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I think it will be a conversation of do we offer it for the additional 2 weeks for students that are on reading plans? Because right now, we only do it in Adventure Camp in June.
Is there anything in Act 20 law that says how long it has to be?
Nope, just that it has to be offered. That's what the law says.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, thanks for filling in. If anybody comes up with questions,
Please ask.
please reach out. Moving on, next item is the 2026-27 meal prices.
Yep, and I'll take that one, Rod. This is the only thing on the agenda for Rod, so I thought he didn't have to come in just for this, so he's putting in plenty of board time lately. All right, so this is meal price recommendations. As it says there in the rationale, the federal subsidies are not as high as they used to be during the pandemic, and we need to increase meal prices slightly to catch up and make sure that we are covering our costs. I was talking to Matt about this earlier. So in Fund 50, the food service fund, it's not just about covering the cost for like Taher and the food, it's also all the equipment and the supplies. So you don't want to run a deficit in your food service balance where you have to use then fund $10 for things like a stove or a steamer or some of the things that we recently had to purchase that are pricey. So this modest increase will help address that. So if you look at the table below, it shows by elementary, middle school, and high school the proposed per meal price, breakfast on the left, lunch on the right, and in the red text it shows the increase. So it's essentially a 10-cent increase per meal across the board. And then it says estimated monthly, that's the total, not of the increase. That's the total on the new price. So with that 10-cent increase, we'll go the first line at elementary, that brings it to $1.90 for a child for about those 20 meals for that 1 month. That would be a cost of the $38. The 10 cents is about a $2 monthly expense or the increase year over year. And as Rod pointed out, this puts us kind of right in the average with the other districts in our region. Questions about this?
You just mentioned the deficit. What's the plan then to attack that?
So, well, right now, honestly, we have to use Fund 10 for equipment that we have to purchase. This is the plan. These modest increases are the plan to catch up and get to a point where we're not running such a deficit.
Okay. Any other questions on meal prices? Corey, I assume you're still tracking and you'll chime in if you have anything?
Yep, thanks, Matt. I
Okay. I won't ask you every time, but we'll just listen for you.
Dave, any benchmark data on this, how we compare to other districts?
In terms of the price,
Correct.
yeah, we're right within the average of our regional comparisons with this increase.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if no other questions, we can move on.
All right, thank you.
Next one, handbook updates. We'll jump right to number 2, all school handbook. Who's coming out?
All right, so I'll speak to that one. Joe can jump in also. So Joe, Pam, and I got together to go through our all-district handbook. Jesse and our school nurse, Anna Kowalski, also looked at it from a healthcare lens and a pupil services lens. So you can see an overview of what the proposed changes for the all-school handbook is. And again, the all-school handbook encompasses all elementary, middle, and high school. Page 1, the one that's outlined is simply the year, updating it. Page 2, this is a recommendation from our transportation department to include language to reference transportation information from Safeway, so it's more visible in our handbook for families. That is information that they do receive if they ride, but we wanted to make sure it was really spelled out in our handbooks as well. Page 3 have to do with healthcare related revisions or updates, just some verbiage that needed to be updated from school nurse to registered nurse, because that's what we've got going here. And then for illness, we felt that aspirin and Tylenol was very specific, so just to have broad on what the recommendations were with that. Page 5, lost and found, we wanted to be specific of where they were located, or no, is this the one, Joe, where it was outlined for just elementary but not middle and high school, so we wanted to make sure it was just on the all school handbooks. Same thing with medication policy. This one was only outlined in the elementary handbook and not the all school, so we wanted to make sure it was consistent. Page 6, the student use of cell phones, other two-way communication devices, and laser pointers. We struck most of that so it could be consistent with the recently approved district policy. So the things that would not be relevant anymore with the new policy, we wanted to make sure reflected in the all-school handbook. I think that covers the all-school handbook.
Any questions on that one? All right, elementary.
Is there a room for that one, Alicia?
Yes. Yep.
Greetings, everyone. Here are the edits and changes for this year's Somerset Elementary School Student and Family Handbook. First of all, the school year date has changed to reflect the 2026-2027 school year. Also, and this is really the most important change that I've made this year, and it's really important we get this out to all families, so you'll hear me talk about it often. We have changed our end of day student dismissal time from 3 o'clock to 3:05 p.m. We did this for a number of reasons, but we really hope that it will help decrease the amount of time students are on our school buses and make us closer aligned to the middle school and high school dismissal times. On page 2, this is not a change in practice, but I just changed the wording to have it make a little bit, hopefully, more sense. We, as you know, send out a monthly newsletter to families. We used to have this information, the newsletter, on the scoop. We no longer do that. We send the newsletter out via Infinite Campus, and it is linked on our website, and it is linked in the scoop that corresponds to that month. Also on page 2, you'll notice that I've edited the tardiness section to closely align to our new practices and to closely align to the practices at the middle school and the high school. On page 3, you'll see that I changed our breakfast end time to 8:05 a.m. We find that students can get into school at 7:50, between 7:50 and 8:05 to eat their breakfast in plenty of time. Remember, our doors open at 7:50. Students enter the door that's closest to their classroom, and they either can go into breakfast or they can go into their classroom. Our day officially begins at 8 o'clock. Breakfast eaters are done at 8:05 and make their way to their classrooms for our day to begin and our announcements to happen. Also on page 3, you'll notice that there's a section about classroom interruptions. This is not a new practice. I just reworded it, hopefully for more clarity. We have tables in our vestibule and sheets of paper where parents can fill out the information they need to get items delivered to their students. So if a student forgets a lunch, they can fill out a piece of paper and it'll be delivered to the student in their classroom. Parents do not have to enter the office. Also, on this page 3, you'll notice that I changed to reflect, we no longer have to have our concerts and programs at the elementary school. We have them at our beautiful Performing Arts Center. On page 4, you'll notice those 2 health sections have been completely eliminated from the Somerset Elementary Handbook and now are all in the All District Handbook. And also the next section is just updated to reflect that end of day 3:05 end time. On page 5, again, you'll notice that we no longer send all information in the scoop. We send out a monthly newsletter. So information about conferences will be in that monthly newsletter and also linked on our website and in the scoop. Page 6, we were really fortunate last year that we created as a system school-wide behavior expectations, or the Spartan Way, district-wide, district-wide. So I've edited our school-wide expectations to match our district expectations of be responsible, be respectful, be safe, and be resilient, which is our Spartan Way across our entire district. Finally, this year I changed the telephone call section to again match our 3:05 time. Thank you so much for your time. Again, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out, and I will see you again in July.
Anybody have any questions I just want to air regarding this handbook or the changes? Okay. Middle school.
Okay, the middle school adjustments are really editorial. It's the update of the school year on page 1. And as Pam talked about our district-wide Spartan Way, that was being formed when our handbooks were approved last year. And so that's why top 20 was still in there in the middle school, and now it reflects what we had in practice last year.
Oh, short changes here. I'm like scrolling, what's that? Any questions on middle school? Excellent. High school.
So high school, beyond the title page and page 1 with updating the years. On page 6, we struck communication devices completely. Again, we didn't get rid of that, we moved it further down the handbook and we rebranded it as personal communication devices to be consistent with the district policy language. So come back to that in a second. So page 6, where it said communication devices, that section was struck and then replaced with personal communication devices further on down. On page 7, underneath driving privileges, we added one line underneath the requirements that in order for a student to receive their parking permit, they have to complete their annual update through Infinite Campus through the registration process. Page 9, that's where we dropped in the personal communication device language to be consistent with what our district policy is with the bell-to-bell, and then our practices with that. And then page 10, graduation requirements. There are no changes for our graduation requirements. What we wanted to do was very clearly spell out what they are for our core classes. So previously, social studies listed the classes. What we noticed was that it referenced a class that was no longer offered and was an outdated class. So we wanted to make sure that that was correct. And then we just felt, you know, at the same time when we're doing that, let's make sure we spell out what the math requirements are, what the English requirements are, and what the science ones are as well. So no changes to the graduation requirements, we just wanted to do a better job of spelling them.
That's what I'm saying. Yep. Any questions? Can you just, on the parking pass, I'm curious, I know we added that fee not that many years ago. Like, is there still a benefit? Where does that money go to? Is it time to get rid of it, to alleviate some extra fees off families? Can you talk to that at all right now, or we can talk later?
Yeah, so when that came in, that was a way to help generate revenue for the district, so that goes into the general district revenue fund. So as we were, I think at the time when that would probably been like about 4-ish years ago, I think. That was for sure in an effort to help increase revenue opportunities for the district as we were going through a bunch of reductions and so on and so forth. But as far as where the money goes, it goes into the general district revenue.
I know we can, okay.
But again, philosophically, typically, it's sort of earmarked for things like striping and the maintenance of the parking lot that get more use with the more traffic. So kind of it's, although yes, it is a fee, it's a user fee versus a general fee for everyone. You only have to pay it if you choose to drive. That's usually the philosophy behind that. I wasn't here when that happened, but that's typically what you see.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and then the virtual program.
All right, so I'll take that one. Brandon is currently traveling the East Coast, so not a lot of changes, just the year on page 1. On page 2, we ran into a couple of situations this year where we had some of our virtual students working so much that their schoolwork was falling behind. So we wanted to clarify and make sure that, realize that yes, part of this is flexible, so you can work and hold a job, but school is still, you still have to keep up with that. So that's just some clarity that way. And it did say that we did do a change. It used to say that our courses do not align. We changed it to may because Brandon has done a ton of work with aligning what we're offering in person to the virtual, so that if a student has to be out for a while, that it's an easier transition. We have the course link is new for this year, and then we do let students who are virtual participate in some of our coursework in person, so our CIS courses, our AP, band, and choir. We did not have on their school to work, but we did add that, and we do allow that for virtual students, so we want to just make sure that that's reflected in the handbook as well. And then just for some further clarification, because we do academic and career planning 612, and that's a state requirement, they may need to come in for something like that. It's just a may, and it just kind of covers in case they do need to come in person. We already addressed the testing that has to happen in person and that sort of thing in other parts of the handbook, but those are the newest additions that we have for this year.
Thank you. Any questions on virtual programs? All right, so these will all be ready. They'll come back in 2 weeks for approval, so we'll be set to go.
Correct.
Okay. If anybody has any questions in the meantime or finds any grammatical errors, you know, we'll typically find 1 or 2. Maybe not this year, though, yeah. All right, next up, snack purchase pre-approval.
All right, so that's me. As you all know, we bring in our professional learning community leaders in the summer. I also have mentors come in, and then our new to district folks stay after school and work with me once a month. So this is just the pre-approval from you all to say that, yes, I can purchase food from my existing budget. That is not a PK-12 purchase, but rather for specific groups. So that's just following that policy. So it comes right out of my budget. There's nothing financial that impacts anything.
Good. Any questions? Okay. Next up, academic standards.
All right. So this is also the approval that we need to, that you will need to approve the fact that we are following the Wisconsin academic standards. They serve as our goals for both classroom instruction as well as student learning. We're aligned to both state and national academic standards. So for example, like art, we have Wisconsin art standards, but they also work with the national art standards. Music is very similar to that piece as well. So our standards are what our students should know and be able to do, and if we are teaching those, then we should be seeing success on the state assessments that are aligned to our standards. So just need to approve that notice. The link to the standards is at the bottom of that paragraph. I did go through and ensure that all of the dates were updated because a couple of them The state goes through a revision process as well, every 7 years, and sometimes they're revised, and sometimes they are not revised. And so I just wanted to make sure that, so when you go out there, you will see in parentheses on the link, the last time that they were revised. You'll remember the big ones in like 2020, the ELA standards were heavily revised, and then in 2021, our math standards were heavily revised. So those are reflected out there as well.
Any questions on that memo? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Pupil Services, Jesse.
Yep, so just the yearly report of any use of seclusion and restraint. So in the memo, I do outline kind of what seclusion is. So that is where, students are confined to a separate area, or they're physically not allowed to leave. Restraint is defined as that restriction where you are immobilizing, any kind of torso, arms, legs, head, right? So we train all of our behavior response teams in our nonviolent crisis intervention, and special education teachers and special ed paras district-wide. Principals are also trained in that as well, so they have an understanding of kind of all of those de-escalation techniques, because anytime we are using seclusion or restraint, it is a last resort. So there has to be some type of imminent threat to that student or another student or staff. So again, we try to do everything that we can before we utilize something like that, because it can be pretty traumatic for the student and staff when we're having to utilize kind of that level of restriction. So you can see it's kind of outlined in different areas. That first number is just the total incidence of seclusion only. So this year we had 12. And then it goes through, number of students involved in that seclusion. There were 4. So of those students, they had to be secluded multiple times. That is also the students that have disabilities in that area. Last year, we had a total number of 9, so that was a slight increase. Total number of incidents of physical restraint, so this year we had 18. There were 11 students that had to be physically restrained. Of those 11, 10 were students with disabilities. That was also an increase from last year, up from 12. And then it outlines, there might be different situations where both seclusion and restraint would have to be utilized. Like we said, putting our hands on those students is always a last resort, so we try to maybe kind of separate them out to keep them safe. But then if they're kind of continuing to harm themselves, then we might need to intervene with a more restrictive measure. So of that, there were 14 incidents, five students were involved, and of those 5, 4 were students with a disability. So total number of incidents, 25, 26, or total number of students involved, 12, and then total number of students with disabilities, 11. So as you can see, not the numbers we would like to see. They have increased from last year. You guys have heard me talk a little bit about the ES3 grant and some things that we're putting in place to kind of address some of these social emotional needs when the students are really dysregulated, or they're looking to kind of increase some of their coping skills. One of the things that we're doing and kind of putting in place is that root cause protocol. There is also a specific root cause protocol for seclusion and restraint. So we're working with Risa Haas from TPI to kind of come through and specifically focus at our elementary level. Trying to understand, we're seeing these behaviors, we're seeing these students that are really dysregulated. What kinds of things can we put in place to try to reduce that? So we're kind of taking it to the next level with that root cause protocol. The other thing, we went in and you guys heard me talk a little bit about just the need for some additional staffing at that elementary level. The majority of these are at the elementary, but also in years past, we haven't had any at the middle or high school, and this year we've also had it at the middle and high school too. So kind of just an uptick in general, and so we're trying to put some additional supports in place for our staff to continue to train them. We'll train them with the nonviolent crisis intervention, but then kind of take it to the next level of really understanding what other kind of evidence-based strategies can we try to put in place.
Just kind of curious, how in all the categories, what were the numbers last year versus this year? Do you have the last year's numbers?
Yeah, so those are just, I guess I don't have it separated out for number of students with disability, because they're seclusion, we had 9 last year, this year we have 12. restraint, we had 12, this year we had 18.
Are you talking about with disabilities and without, Steve, or is that the number you're looking for?
No, I missed the.
Okay, with the 24 inside, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in all of the areas they've gone up.
And do you have any theories as to why?
Yeah, I mean, some new students have moved in, so right, just kind of varying needs. I would also say just kind of, because some of these are the same students as well that struggled last year, but now they're continuing to struggle, and the needs are continuing to be there. Middle and high school, those were kind of just very unique situations, I would say. But we continue to train all of our staff for those situations, so they've kind of come up and evolved as some of their behaviors have evolved. So
Okay.
I don't have any clear-cut answer.
No, I mean, it was a general question.
Yeah.
But if you go back to 2020 or before COVID, I just wanted to, what it looked like back then versus now, did we keep the same kind of?
Yeah, we can go back and look, and I would say there is definitely, because 23, 24, we dropped last year, which was really exciting, really excited about it. So it is going to fluctuate just based on the needs and the things that are going on with those students in particular, so.
Okay.
Look at some more longitudinal data, just to kind of see over time, but I know it does, it fluctuates.
Yeah, just curious.
Any other questions on this report?
I have one. Is there any way to compare to other districts with that, or is this pretty specific and it's just so unique to each district?
Yeah, it's not something we necessarily share with our,
Right.
like with my other directors, but we do have to report it out to the state. So there probably is some data, I haven't looked compared to other districts. If you have so many, we have not even come close to this threshold. This is still concerning to me that I want to kind of continue to work on it. But then if you get over, like it's like over 100 or something, extreme number, the state comes in and makes sure that you are putting some other plans and procedures in place to reduce that. So I know the state does track it, but I haven't looked. Thank you.
Just my only question would be, we talked about additional staff, talked about compensation last meeting, like, could we get an update once the school year gets started, so sooner than this time next year, on where we're at? Because if there's additional needs, I think getting after it sooner or later would be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that update.
Yeah.
Potential budget reductions.
All right, yep, that's gonna be me.
Do you want me to go?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you have one more.
I have
Sorry about that.
It just, yeah. The second one is just the memo for the physical therapy contract. So we have a shared contract agreement with, through the Baldwin Woodville School District, and then St. Clair Central. So we all share one physical therapist. That, there's nothing for approval right now, but the memo is on there, just the cost for it. It's not going up from last year. We slightly increased it last year, but it's a .4 that we work with our physical therapist, and that's meeting our needs right now. So just on there, if you have questions, please go through it, or questions with the numbers, let me know.
Thank you, sorry.
That's okay.
Any questions on that memo? Okay. Now, we'll move on.
All right, so now budget reduction, a potential budget reduction. So this document is set up so we have some broad-based understanding of what we will do if we don't go to referendum or if we don't pass a referendum. It's not intended to be granular enough to make like decisions like in this year we would definitely do this, but kind of broad brushstrokes so we can understand these are the things we would likely be looking at. The way it's organized, first we have a description of the reduction in column A. Column B is the year that takes place, and they're numbered so we can sort and change. So year one being next year, those budget reductions that are listed for 26-27 have already been acted on. Those are in the budget. Those reductions have taken place and will be realized next year. And then starting in year two, if we would end up going to referendum in November, that would be the first year that, the first year of the increased revenue would be that year two, 27-28. But if it doesn't, if we don't have one, or if it would not pass, these are the sorts of things we would look at. Then in column C, then the amount, column D, the impact. So that's just kind of a bullet point. what is the impact of this reduction? Because people often ask, well, if you can do this, why don't you just do it? Well, any reduction we have is going to have an impact somewhere along the plan, and we want to make sure we can spell that out. But then the next column, E, that's a little bit of a different look. Those are specific elements of the goals that we've approved or our strategic plan that we've committed to. And we're saying these reductions would impact our ability to deliver on the promise that we've had with the goal or the strategic plan. So that's how that all rolls out. If you scroll down to rows 17 through 21, we have formulas in there, so we can see the running total. That is a total, if all of those reductions were put in place over the course of those 5 years, that would be, or 4 years, it would be the $1.8 million. And then we can see for each year, for 26, 27, totals to $131,000. And then you can see each year from that point forward. One thing that is clear, the biggest way to have an increase, or I'm sorry, an impact on the budget and to decrease the budget is through staffing. More than 80% of our overall budget goes into staffing, whether we're talking about salary and benefits altogether. It's about 80% of the overall budget, so it's hard to make a big swing when you're not impacting staff members. So that it makes for a difficult conversation, yet we're trying to be strategic with the way we map this out. So, like I said, 26, 27 are already in action. As we move forward, these are plans. As we have the smaller class sizes moving through the system, we can start to realize some of that potential savings as those numbers roll up. To be clear, some of these we would likely enact regardless if we pass or do not pass or do not have a referendum. Some of these changes will just happen. We would use our class size guidelines to make those determinations. So if we can have a reduction and we'd still stay within those class size guidelines that we talked about a few months ago, we would take those reductions. What we would not do though is, unless we absolutely needed to, is have a reduction that brings us above those class size guidelines or well above those class size guidelines. That's why those are super important in the decisions we make. You'll also notice as you scroll through here, a lot of what ends up happening is we reduce opportunities of choice for kids. So if we reduce electives at the high school level, you can save money doing that. You can save a lot of money by reducing electives, but you reduce choice, and that's one of the cornerstones of a comprehensive and rich high school experience is student choice and the electives that they take. So most of that, as I said, staffing related. A couple of them are not. So if we go down, if we scroll down to row 8, it's not a big number, but about $20,000 with a 5% reduction in the supply budget and classroom budget. What we know then is that once we have that amount, if we know 5% is $20,000, if we need to scale that up or scale that down to meet the budget, we can do that. We keep on going down. We have reduction or elimination of activities and activity stipends. So that would be reducing the activities we have or the stipends associated with those. We could realize about a $70,000 reduction there, but again, that drastically impacts the choices our kids would have. You can see some combination of teaching assignments as we scroll down. A freeze on non-essential travel. There's some travel you just have to have, but a freeze on non-essential travel, that is a very high-level estimate of the $10,000. Depending on what we consider essential, you can realize more or less of that overall savings. The idea is we would use this document as a guide to make decisions. A couple things we want to do with this. One, if you have ideas that you want to explore, let us know, because then we can explore that, we can put some dollars around it, we can let you know what we think the impact would be, but we certainly want to continue to try to be as efficient as we possibly can. Because of the significant reductions that took place a few years ago, we've talked about this, we're already running very lean. That's why this is not rhetoric when we say this is the impact. It's not, we're not trying to oversell the impact. We already run so lean that if we do make further cuts, it does have a significant impact. There's no more kind of fluff that we could get after, and not to suggest that there was fluff in the past, but there certainly is not now. So that is a look at all that. Until we get all the way down to those big numbers at the bottom, you can see in row 13 and row 16, the only way to make up the difference would be a pay freeze. At that point, that's what would be necessary when we get into those years where there's a significant deficit. And in that first year, Rod has figured this all out for us. So in 28-29, an estimate of $525,000. And then in 29-30, an estimate of $575,000 if we would freeze salaries and wages in total. So we know a couple things with that. We talked about the impact on student choice. The other big impact here is on retention of high-quality staff. If you start increasing class sizes and along with that you freeze pay, we will lose our great staff. That's just, it's a given, it will happen, and it won't just be on the fringe. If we did both of those things, we can pretty much guarantee we would see several people choose to leave the district if it's not happening in neighboring districts or even, you know, across the river for certain positions. So this is not a finalized product, but we thought it was important to have a conversation about this before we go too far down the conversation of a referendum. We need to know what would happen if we don't. So this is the beginning of that plan. We would use this as a guide. Each year, we would dig in and we'd refine it. The numbers would become more precise and the plan would become more precise, but there's no way to predict 5 years exactly what that would look like. Questions on this?
I have a question. Was any of this based on any of the feedback from the survey, or is this your?
It actually wasn't. We didn't have it at the time because we put this together previously, but that's a really good point. As we go through the survey presentation, they offer suggestions on where they'd like to see cuts. So, and we definitely want to fold that in. That's a great idea.
So, because we have 3 different options, right, in the survey?
Yes.
So this would be accounting for the baseline?
This is like if we do not go to referendum or if we did and it didn't pass. This is considering no new money. This is what we would have to do.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the pay freeze. Does that mean that staff will not get step work?
Yeah, that number is a total pay freeze. And again, let's say that we found there was a change in the state funding formula and we found the situation wasn't as dire because new money was coming in from the state. But we still had to address pay freeze. We could say steps but no lanes. We could say you can adjust it however you want. We could say for certain positions that we know were well below market that we would still have an increase but not across the board. But that would be the maximum in total freeze, and we could always scale back from there if we needed to.
So on this document, the number listed is total.
Yes. And you can see that to get to that 1.8, that was necessary. And remember that that number keeps climbing. We only have a 5-year projection, but we know which way it goes. We know that in year 6 and 7 and 8, it continues to get worse unless we would see a change in funding. Even if we turned the enrollment trend around and had flat enrollment, so we were graduating more kids than we're bringing in right now, we know that. But let's say that evened out, and we were graduating the same number that we're bringing in kindergarten, so it was flat. Even with a slight increase in migration, we would still have to find reductions if things don't change at the state level. Enrollment alone would not turn this around.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, Dave. I really appreciate this. It helps speak a lot of context of weighing the pros and cons. What's the plan for ongoing discussions using this format?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Corey. One of the things that I would foresee is when we know more about the direction with the referendum, and when I say direction, even like knowing are we going and or are we not, and then ultimately if we would go in November, did it pass, did it not pass, is sitting down and doing some workshopping with the board and admin to flesh this out and make it more specific. But I would see that on an annual basis, not on a 5-year projection. In the meantime, we want to continue to refine. As Danny's point, if we learn things through the survey, which I think we will, we've seen that report already, so I think there'll be great information that could help us prioritize where we might see savings. That would be long-term, but most of the action I would see more on an annual basis.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Anything else? All right, thank you for this information.
You bet.
I appreciate you putting this all together, and it's out there for everybody in the community to look at and see that there's a template. So, next up, survey results.
All right, so we are going to bring Darren up on the screen. He's been waiting patiently. Thank you, Darren.
No problem at all. I've learned a lot. It's an interesting meeting to listen in on, and a lot of it is actually very timely and related to the survey, so it all fits together.
Yeah. All right.
Are you seeing my screen?
We are seeing the screen, yes.
Hey, good. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Sievers. I was one of the project managers on your community survey project, and I have.
Darren, we're gonna pause you just for 1 second. Sorry, we're gonna change the screen here so we can get a little better view.
Great, no problem.
That helps. And then, Alicia, I wonder if you can tip your laptop down. Your laptop there.
Just a little.
Yeah, I think it's blocking there.
There, perfect.
Yeah. Or do that, that works too.
It's just blocking us, that's all.
Yeah.
Oh, you?
Yeah, it's just blocking our view.
Yeah.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
All right, there we go. Okay, Darren, you're all set now. Sorry about that.
All right, great. Again, my name is Darren Sievers. I'm a project manager with School Perceptions, former superintendent in the Slinger School District near Milwaukee, and I'm a former customer of School Perceptions. Now I'm helping districts like yours gather information from your community. So the flow of the presentation tonight is the table of contents on your screen. I'm going to give you one slide of our company for anybody in the audience that may be listening that doesn't know who we are and what we do. And then we're going to get right into your survey results and our analysis. And I'll take any and all questions the board has at the end of the presentation, during the presentation, whenever something hits you. Just please speak up. I'm here to serve and report out. So again, we're School Perceptions. Our mission is to help educational leaders gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. We've been doing this for 24 years. We've done 3.3 million staff, parent, student, and community surveys in all 50 states and 5 foreign countries. And now we just topped the 1,400 district mark with number of districts we've helped with strategic planning and referendum planning, like the project that you brought us on to do. So let's talk about our survey findings. Your survey had a deadline of June 15th. And while I say it has a deadline, we never really enforced the deadline. For example, I shared some initial results with David and the admin team last week, where we had 15 more surveys come in the mail over the holiday weekend. Folks that maybe mailed it after the due date. Well, we put all those in over the weekend and this morning and updated the report. We want every voter and taxpayer that took the time to fill the survey out to have their results in there. And there is early as this morning, this is as fresh, hot off the presses as I can give you. So you had 561 respondents, which is a 13.2% response rate. If you're wondering, is that a good response rate? Is that a bad response rate? Well, here's some context. Our company average is 18% across all of our community surveys. What we typically see is about a 4 or 5% surge for our facility surveys when they're weighing in on building a new school, remodeling a school, adding some space. So it is not a surprise that your operational survey is a bit less. And also, we do see a bit of a decline in the summer. Once folks are into the summer mode, we're never surprised that there's a couple of % lower. But what you should know is 13.2% is very, very satisfactory. It's very reliable data for us. Once the data hits the 10% mark, it really flattens out and tends to be very representative of all the opinions in your district. I lived this back in 2015 when I was white knuckled waiting for my results from School Perceptions, and the owner reassured me, says, hey, the data's not going to change that much once you hit 10%. Another benchmark we use, though, is 500 surveys or more. Once we hit 500, we see the data really flattens out and becomes very, very stable, and you hit both of those marks with your project. That being said, a community your size has a margin of error you have to account for statistically, and that is plus or minus 4.2%. That will come into play towards the end of the presentation when I give you a prediction of voter support. The bigger the community, the lower the margin for error. I did a project exactly a year ago this time for Rapid City, South Dakota, where we processed 8,000 surveys for them. they had a 1% margin of error because so many surveys were submitted and they're a huge district. Yours is going to be a bit more vulnerable because you're not a large district like them. But we'll talk about that more when I get to our projections. Within the anonymous process that we provide you, where each survey can only be taken once, through our alphanumeric encrypted one-time usage code, we do ask information about the survey respondent just to do some analysis of different age groups for you. And this was your distribution of the 561 surveys by age range. And this is very, very typical. We almost always find the most populated groups are 65 plus and the 35 to 44-year-olds. 65 plus because they're on a fixed income and retired typically. 35 to 44 because that tends to be the range of ages when they're parents and they have children impacted by the school's budget very directly. Another question on the survey is, are you a resident or not? Now, someone in the audience may say, well, I thought you surveyed just the district of Somerset. Well, we did, but within the survey, there were folks that had access to the survey that are non-residents. For example, we sent the survey to all of your parents, and you have some parents that are non-residents. They open enroll into Somerset because they want their kids to learn in your school system. We will take them out of the projections when we get to voter projections because they cannot vote. Same thing with your staff. We sent the survey to every staff member because these are their budgets, working conditions that are being impacted. But if they can't vote, then we need to pull the staff that are not residents out of our findings when we give a projection of voter support. So 88% of the 561 identified as being residents of the district. Pardon me, another way we ask folks to identify themselves, and we do ask them what town, village, or city they live in. And this was your distribution by the municipalities within your boundaries. In talking to David and his administrative team, sounds like this is a very representative distribution of survey takers relative to your population. And I'll remind you, the reason we do this is because we find that sometimes there's competing tax asks within a community. For example, in Portage, Wisconsin, the city was trying to build a new ambulance center. At the same time, I was doing a survey for them to check in on remodeling the middle school and build a new pool. And so you have these dual tax asks at the same time. I'm not aware of anything going on in these townships and villages, but again, we have the data where we can study support levels by municipality for you. All right, now this next slide. Whenever PowerPoint meshes with Google Meets, I sometimes get these errors. And so I'm going to tell you that these two graphics here, we had 19% of the respondents identify themselves as employees. Very important for me to clarify that because they are less than 1% of eligible voters. So while they were highly engaged, they cannot show up at that rate at the poll. So we will reweight the staff down to less than 1% of eligible voters when we give our projections. The other pie chart that for some reason when Google Video interfaces with Microsoft, that pie chart somehow disappeared, but is 44% of your respondents are parents. That's an overrepresentation of your parent base as well. We studied your census data, and 30% of your eligible voters in Somerset are parents. So we'll need to correct that because right now staff and parents are a bit overrepresented in our 561 surveys, and we account for that with every project we do. So within the survey, we did ask, what is your preferred means of communication? Because while surveying is very important, it's also very important to get back to your community with what you learned through the survey. And this is also good information for you just on a day-to-day running your district basis. We found out that the 30% of your voters that identify as parents, they prefer an email, an online newsletter, going to the website, or social media. However, the 70% of your voters that are not parents and are not staff, they would prefer a mailed newsletter, followed by the website, an online newsletter, maybe on the website, and to a lesser extent, email if you have their email, and social media. That group, the non-parents, non-staff that make up 70% of your community, they don't work for you, they don't have kids in the system, they're tough to reach. So a mailed newsletter we have found is the best way to get critical information to them about what's going on in the district and what your plans are with the survey findings. So let's get into the survey itself. This is a screenshot where we educated the community on the two different types of referendums, because you did have a capital referendum back in 2023, and then we explained to them the difference in what an operational referendum is. Then we outlined for them as succinctly as possible the complicated nature of the financial challenges you're facing, and explained that because of the increasing costs and the distribution of state aid, that there's a gap in funding that puts you at a crossroads very, very shortly in the future. And I just listened in, as David already articulated, a very well thought out plan if you don't have referendum dollars to count on. So our first question on the survey comes up next, and we asked the respondents, would you support the district exploring an operational referendum to help balance the budget? Now, in your review of our survey before we sent it to print, you may remember we asked this question without attaching dollars on purpose. The very first question is, would you support an operational referendum? And the reason we don't ask a dollar amount is that gauges support for anything. Would they be willing to do anything to help the district out financially? Your results were very positive. 90% of staff said that they would be supportive. Those that live in the district would be supportive. 68% of parents said yes, and 40% of non-parents, non-staff. Now you see the no's, 2% of staff, 17% of parents, and 33% of non-parents, non-staff said no. And then the not sure's were pretty typical. Our company average for undecideds is 12%. Staff were below it. Parents were slightly above it. And there's no surprise that the non-parents, non-staff at 27% are saying, well, I'm not sure because you haven't told me how much you're going to act and what that's going to cost me on my tax bill. But again, to explain the philosophy behind this question, sometimes, no matter what dollar amount we ask, we'll have districts on this page say, no, we don't support any of it. And unfortunately, I had one of those reports that I had to give this spring where a district was told, there's no dollar amount you could put in the ballot that we would support. And then the board and the district administration, no, they've just got to go forward with their cost cut. That is not the case in Somerset. They've said, yes, we would consider something that allows us to move forward with the survey and gauge support for different thresholds. So we put 3 thresholds of dollar amounts in front of them. And thanks to David and his admin team, this is one of the most efficient rollouts of the different thresholds and what the money would be spent on that I've ever been a part of in my 4 years with the company. His team was brilliant, and I see why, because your board meetings are so well organized tonight, so systematic. That was our process of writing this too. We have a very clear picture of 1.4 million, 1.7 million, and then 2 million in what those dollars would be spent on, along with and for each case, we have the accompanying dollar amount per $100,000 of property value. And again, we use 100,000 as a baseline because in Wisconsin, unlike Minnesota, property taxes are linear in Wisconsin, and so you simply multiply the value of your home by the hundreds of thousands that your home is valued at, 3 or 4, whatever that may be. So we also educated folks on this graphic of what it would do to the mill rate and showed all 3 options and where it would leave the mill rate compared to previous year's mill rates, which pictorially, I think was a very powerful way of communicating where the district would stand. A slight uptick, and then it kind of levels and tapers off in the years if it were passed. So, as you're sitting there, you're saying, well, what did we learn about the support? Well, I'll show you. The next screen is a lot of data. And we've broken it out by non-parents, non-staff, 70% of voters, parents, who are 30% of voters, and staff, whose voice really, really matters, but they don't move the needle at the polls. because there's so few of them that are eligible voters. So what we learned from the non-parents, non-staff with that dotted line in the middle, and I'll make this much simpler on the next slide. But the dotted line in the middle represents 50%, and 50% plus one vote is what it takes to pass a referendum in Wisconsin. So the non-parents, non-staff were just below the 50% mark for the 1.4 million. They landed in the something smaller than 1.4 million category, but just barely. Parents hit the 50% mark in the 1.7 million band, and staff hit the 50% mark in the $2 million band. But again, we have to do our weighting exercise to make sure it's representative of eligible voters. And we simplify this very easily for you on the next page with all of the yeses. Everyone that said yes to each of the dollar increments was calculated, and it's summarized on this slide after we weighted them based on their representation of the eligible voters. So our projections, if the vote were held today, would be that 2 million would only get 26.5% yeses. 1.7 million would get 42.8% yes. Then once we get to 1.4 million, even though, as you see, 48% of the parents, non-staff would have said yes, the fact that 75% of parents, or 30% of your voters, when we add that together, we project 56.1% of voters would say yes to 1.4 million, and then something smaller lands at 62.3%. These numbers all nudged down just a little bit over the weekend because the surveys that came in the mail tend to be the more conservative voters. That's just what happens with the paper surveys that are mailed to our headquarters. They tend to be more conservative folks they're not quite as willing to say yes. We just studied that over the years. So right now, the data is quite clear. It looks like 1.4 million would have support, but if you went up to 1.7 million, it would not. Got another way of showing you the data that's in line with how we reported the mill rates, shows you the levels of support by increment. One thing I do want to point out for the board is I move back to this slide. You'll notice that the undecideds within the non-parent, non-staff dropped from 27% before we told them how much we're asking for, all the way down to the gray bar of 11%, right at our company average. And the parents were quite clear, they're only at 9%, and staff were all the way down to 2%. So once we articulated not just how much you're going to spend, but what you would spend it on and what it would mean to the property taxes, those undecideds dropped dramatically. Within the survey, we also said, if the referendum weren't to pass, what would you like to see us cut? And we just heard a report from David and his team on those things. Here's what your voters and taxpayers, parents, staff, and non-parents, non-staff said. And I've got another way of looking at this for you. This is the aggregate data of everyone. Technology was first, athletics and co-curricular second, classroom materials, and so on down the list. I can show you the disaggregated data. The purple represents, again, the non-parents, non-staff. Their top choice was athletics and technology student services. Staff had classroom materials as number one, technology is number two, and then athletics and extracurriculars is number three, in a tie with course offerings. And then parents had technology number one, classroom materials number two, and then student services and then co-curriculars number three as well. So really, within the top two, there's some agreement. Top two or three, there's some agreement. Really, co-curriculars and technology came to the top of that list, as I displayed here with the aggregate slide. Within the survey, we also asked for future planning priority. Over the next 5 years, we said, which of the areas should the district prioritize for improvement? And we said you can only pick 4, which puts them in the similar situation you're in as a school board, where you can't chase improvements in every area because dollars are not unlimited. So we gave them a list of 25 areas, and I'll show you your top 5 and your bottom 5 tonight. Within your top 5, we've got it broken out by staff, parents, non-staff. You'll see within staff, their biggest priority is retaining a staff. They want to stay on the team. They want you to address behavior, school safety, mental health for kids, and life skills. Parents want you to prioritize technical education, life skills, a quality staff, college credit opportunities, and safety as well. But then the non-parents, non-staff that don't have kids in the system and don't work for you, their number one was life skills. Number two was career and tech ed, and then literacy and achievement, college credits, and math achievement. So you'll notice life skills was turned blue because that's an area that all three agreed upon as being in their top 5. Other than that, there's some overlap between staff and parents, and some overlap between parents and non-parents, non-staff, but no agreement across all three beyond life skills. As we look at the areas that they're least concerned about, you'll notice there is more agreement. All three groups agreed on student transportation as being their lowest priority. And I blame COVID for this. I think there's a day where everyone was thinking online learning is going to explode and everybody's going to be online and maybe kids don't even come to school anymore. Well, we learned very quickly. I had brown hair before COVID and now it's all white. But online learning, distance learning is lower on the list of priorities. I think it's a very nice option for some kids, but your parents are saying it's not a big priority to grow and put it at the top of the list within the district. Finally, within the survey we did, since David's wrapping up his first year, we did give a section where we asked folks to say what are your top 5 pieces of advice or priority areas for him as superintendent. There were 9 areas, and 2 had agreement across all 3 groups. Improving student discipline and improving student achievement, which is very common when we do a survey like this. Sometimes mental health will bubble to the top of the list because that is a nationwide worry. Sometimes there'll be growing business relationships, things of that nature. But discipline is a common worry, and academic achievement is obviously something that's valued by many of the communities that we serve. So as we wrapped up the survey, we did give them an opportunity to give you feedback on how things are going in the district. And it was in 4 areas: delivering a high-quality education, keeping the public informed, managing funds appropriately, and building pride in the community. And we used a 1 through 4 rating scale, 4 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So the median score is a 2.5. So I always say when you look at this list of all this data, look for areas that are below a 2.5, that would mean it's below average. While your staff feeling very good about all 4 areas, well above the 2.5 mark. Parents are above the 2.5 mark in all 4 areas as well, but non-parents, non-staff are saying they'd like to see a better communication. And we just got done asking them for various million-dollar questions, and they're saying that they're wondering about the management of funds, which whenever we do a financial survey like this, is kind of an obvious area for them to worry about because you're asking them for money. So we aggregated it into a combined score, and then we contrasted it with your survey that you did 4 years ago, just to do some comparisons. You'll see the first column is percent that gave you a good or a great, a 3 or a 4. Second column is what you scored in 2022. Third column is the current year score. And then the 4th column is across hundreds and hundreds of districts where you ask the same question, how your score compares to the average scores we compiled with the other communities we work with. My takeaway here is I was shocked at how stable your satisfaction data is from 4 years ago. It's almost identical. And then finally, the last question on our survey is on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend the district to a friend or family member? And I was very excited to see our findings here for you. On a scale of 0 to 10, your average score this year is a 6.59, only 1/100th higher than it was 4 years ago when we asked the identical question. And then again, the comparison score for all the districts where we asked this question came in at a 7.02, so you're a bit below the average score for other districts. But within that, what was interesting to me, you have unusual number of folks that gave you a 5, the neutral score. And that typically tends to be where the non-parents, non-staff, if they're not sure, they don't have an opinion about you, that's where they'll land, because they can't rave about you. They're not also going to complain because they just don't know. What was telling for me about your results is how top-heavy they are. 45% of your respondents gave you an 8, 9, or a 10. And our research department is studying the 8, 9, and 10 folks, and they tend to be your ambassadors, your cheerleaders, the folks that are saying, hey, I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to tell my neighbors to vote yes. So the higher the satisfaction, the more likely your referendum, if you decide to go to referendum, would pass. So as I wrap up my report and then open up for questions, we always do a what did we learn page. And there's really 3 key takeaways that we identified as recommendations for you. What did we learn? Well, we learned that there is not majority weighted support for 2 million or 1.7 million. But there is majority weighted support for a $1.4 million referendum. And our third takeaway, district satisfaction scores remain consistent with those received in 2026. Now, as we talk about the second bullet, I want to go back to a slide and explain one graphic that I think is very important for you to think about when you talk about next steps. With 56.1% of your folks saying they would vote yes on a $1.4 million question, what's critical about that is that margin of error that I pointed out at the very beginning of my presentation. Your margin of error is plus or minus 4.2%. So even if we say all that statistical margin of error were to go against you, you'd still be at that 50% passage rate. So that's why we say there's majority support, is even without the margin of error working in your favor, we would predict a passing referendum if it were held today at 1.4 million. If this were at 53%, I would be telling you it's too close to call because that margin of error is taken into account. So that's one point I wanted to take away as to what's behind that second bullet point. So with that being said, that's my presentation for you tonight on the data that we gathered. What questions do you have of me about the survey or methodology, anything that I shared tonight?
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Yep, go ahead, Corey.
My question, going back to the very beginning, when you talk about the kind of weighting or removing of non-voters into the data.
Yes.
They think, there's, and you mentioned that that's weighed against total eligible voters, but we all know that, there's less than half of total eligible typically vote. And I'm curious if there is a metric or a way to crunch the data to apply that to the typical percentage of voters and the typical voting range, or the categories.
Two things I can tell you, I guess. Bottom line is, one thing, we've studied every referendum that we've done since 2002, and we have found that our data is 94% predictive of what takes place at the polls. So regardless of whether there's 96% of the survey takers are voters, or 88%, or 72, we have some districts that are huge open enrollment winners, and they have a different percent than you have. But so to answer your question, Corey, I would say there's no way for us to know how many of them are going to show up and vote, but we have found in several projects we've been tracking recently, we've looked at how many have voted relative to surveys process, and it's been within a few hundred. It seems as though those that are motivated to take the survey are the same folks that are motivated to mobilize and go vote at the polls. And so it's not one-to-one, but it's comparable, I guess is what I would tell you. And the best data I have for you is that 94% of the time when we predict that something's gonna pass based on a survey like this, 94% of the time we've been right. Now, I did explain to the administrative group, last week when we went over the initial findings, what about that 6% where we've been wrong? Well, there have been times where we're just plain wrong. But most often, what happens is something changed between our survey and the vote. And in one case, I can tell you in particular, it's the second project I did with the company, the homes got reassessed between the survey and the vote. And so the property tax bills went up significantly, and so the taxes that we speculated about already went up before the vote was even held. And so folks said, I already just got a big tax increase, now I'm saying no. I also had a project where it was too close to call, but we thought it had a chance, and then a no campaign mobilized. And a group of anti-tax people mobilized, and it went down in flames because they got their message out about no new taxes. Another point to make, Corey, too, relative to your question though, we have studied every project we've done in Minnesota and every project we've done in Wisconsin and found that the higher the voter turnout, the more likely a referendum will pass in Wisconsin. So a November vote goes in your favor statistically. The interesting thing is right across the river from you, the lower the voter turnout in Minnesota, the more likely it will pass. So while we share the boundary, the two states, they have completely different dispositions when it comes to voter turnout impacting the referendum. In Wisconsin, the higher the better for districts.
Okay, great, thank you.
You bet.
Other questions in the room?
Are we getting a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, we can get that to
And will it be connected to the agenda so that people who,
Yeah, we could do that. We could, when we post the agenda, we'll just add it in, we'll link it right to the agenda item.
you know, I don't know what it's gonna look like.
There's a
when I look
PDF version.
back. You know, if people were just watching the video, it might have been harder.
Right, yeah, and we can link the PDF version that would have all the things that glitched out a little bit.
And David, maybe this is the time where I can share with the board, what I've been doing with all of my projects lately is going into my office and using my Zoom account to do a recording of just me giving the presentation of the slides with my voice over top of it, that David can email out to staff, parents, and post to the website. And by doing it just on my own, without maybe the more extended explanations and the questions, I can get it down to about a 15-minute presentation. We've had very good luck where districts are getting hundreds of views of that video. They may not come to your board meetings, but they're curious and they want to know. And so we've had good luck getting that out to parents, staff, and putting on the website and getting views from your taxpayers and voters. So I'm going to do that first thing in the morning to create that video and send it to David by noon tomorrow, so you can send it out and get these findings out in the hands of your voters.
Thanks, Darren.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. No other questions in the room. We appreciate the information.
You bet.
Thank you very much, Darren.
You bet. Take care.
Take care.
Does anybody need a quick break for the bathroom? We've been at this for an hour and 45. Anybody?
Look at that.
I am going to sneak out in the
You were seeing that big and,
But somebody. All right, next item, social media report card.
All right, I will take that one. Let's find it here, sorry. All right, so as you know, we've been partnering with Social Schools for EDU, and they help us with our social media communication, and they offer these quarterly report cards so we can track how things are going. So we'll start with Facebook up at the top. You can see we're up to 4,250 total followers. That's a growth of 163. That's from the last report card. So that's going very well. Love to see the average monthly views over 41,000. So that's fantastic. To the question forward, what happens in the summer, we do definitely see a downtick near the end, but if you look at that graph, the Facebook monthly views, you can see that it was certainly increasing month over month, with a few that would dip down a little bit for obvious reasons. You're not going to see as much in January right after the winter break, but certainly trending in the right direction, so we love to see that. Instagram, it's not as prevalent as Facebook, but you can see we're up to 1,093 followers, and that's a growth of 57, so that is looking good. If you look at we skipped right over the pictures, but you can see, people want to see what our kids are doing. That's the thing that's most important to them. There's all sorts of stuff we can send out, but ultimately it's about our students. So we can see the most popular post. One was the graduates, and Danny, pay special attention to that one. And then also the historic baseball run. So some great reaction there. And then if you scroll down below, this is Wisconsin school districts. We have their enrollment and then their monthly viewers. These are all districts that partner with social schools for EDU. I checked, we've maintained that spot at 20. As we're climbing up, some of those other districts are also obviously climbing up because they've got the same initiative going on. But we're holding right there, and we look forward to continued growth going into next year.
Questions? All right, next up, food
Want to
service.
go and take a break now? Want to ask a question again? All right, so food service. So this is the annually required memo. Just really quickly, we meet all of the nutrition standards outlined by the USDA, and our food service management company and school food authority are in compliance. So that means that's essentially our partnership with Taher. And we'll continue our partnership with Taher as outlined in the agreement. Food service agreement complies with all the federal and state regulations. Just a side note on this, going back to what we talked about before with the meal prices, it is to our benefit financially to increase usage of our food offerings. So it's not something like the money doesn't all go to Taher. The way it's set up is we pay the fee to Taher, but then also we need to cover our expenses. Taher doesn't take care of our equipment, so that is on us. So we'll continue to partner with Taher to see if we can increase participation. We have some great ideas to strategically increase breakfast and make it more readily available and more attractive to kids, especially at the secondary level. So we're going to continue to work on that and see if we can get those numbers to bump up a bit. Questions on food service?
All right, hearing none, we move on. Policies. Are you going to cover these, or is it coming from you guys?
They're just technical corrections, there's no significant change in the meaning. It's like adding titles or adding state statute numbers, stuff like that.
Okay, so they're here for the public to see, but there's no approval, there's no second reading.
Right.
Excellent, okay. Moving on, topics for discussion. This is item 4, Neola special update. Is this yours?
Yeah, I'll start, and then policy committee, feel free to jump in certainly. So there'll be a lot of policy work around Act 57 and Act 89. Those are both child protective laws that were passed. Act 57 deals with a school's responsibility to report if there is an allegation of inappropriate behavior or contact between a staff member and a student, and it has very strict timelines. That one, for the most part, is going to be sort of a standalone policy work, that there'll be new policy that will address that. Act 89 is very different. Act 89 has to do with training and our requirements. Essentially, it's like anti-grooming training. And the reason that one is different and a little more complex is it's going to touch several policies that are already in place. So we'll need to modify several policies across several of the different policy groups to make sure we're in compliance. So some heavy-duty policy work. We have a policy meeting scheduled July 20th where we will address those. That will be the primary focus of our policy time in that meeting.
So when will we expect to see those?
Good question. So we'll, the aim would be August work session for the first reading, and then second at the regular session for approval. So we're going to have to do that work quickly.
So in place by September 1st?
Correct.
That's what the
Yeah,
deadline
that's
is?
the deadline, yep.
Okay, anybody have any questions about that? Obviously, there's nothing here other than just basic information for it.
I was just wondering how difficult would it be to link Act 57 and 89 to the agenda?
We could do that. That wouldn't be,
As it exists today, or what the template is.
Well, it's a law that was passed.
yeah, it's
not
not
a
a
law.
policy, so we could, yeah, we could link the, yeah. Got it.
Okay, so more to come on that, that'll be back. Next up, policy 2464.
Yeah, so, and policy committee helped me out. I wasn't sure if this was intended to be the first reading of this policy or if it was a preview of the change. It's a relatively simple change. It was a really good conversation that got us to the change, but I wasn't certain where we landed on that, so.
It's been brought to the board several times, I think since, well, it doesn't say possible action though.
No,
But this could be a first, I think it's good to have it come back.
yeah, we can do that. And there's no timeline on this one,
It's
so.
in the heading of what it's under, that's.
Oh, possible action.
Yeah, it's possible action,
Yeah,
so.
and it's been to the board several times, so I'd be comfortable passing it tonight. So I'll make a motion that we pass it tonight, this final draft of policy 2464.
Okay, so there's a motion by Lori to pass this policy as attached. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Danny. Any discussion?
Do we want to just, do you want to just give a, you're better at explaining that.
I was gonna ask my discussion question was, can someone just point out what that change is, just so it's on video and?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you scroll down to the top of the second page, there's language that's blue. It says free from bias related to. Before then, the language was the identification, so this is about gifted and talented identification. So the process that we would go through as a district to identify and qualify a student to receive gifted and talented support. Previously, it said the identification process and tools shall be responsive to factors such as, but not limited to, pupils' economic conditions, race, gender, culture, native language, developmental differences, and identified disabilities. The conversation was, well, what does that mean to be responsive to? And like the understanding we had was essentially we're saying we need to make sure that our tools don't have internal bias, that we're not creating a situation where students are disadvantaged in their ability to be qualified, but that's not what it said. It said, shall be responsive to. So it could have been interpreted the other way, that we're going to implement tools that are different, and like you'll have one tool for, say, a group of students that are experiencing economic disadvantage and another tool for those that aren't. And that wasn't the intent. So the idea of saying, no, the policy now reads that the tools will be free from bias related to those factors, to be clear to what we mean when we say responsive to. It doesn't change the intent, but it clarifies how that would be used in our district.
Any questions on that, or any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, there's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. One less thing for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Next up, security camera upgrades.
Okay, so this one is under, it's that, you'll notice this category is topics for discussion and possible action. This is one, if possible, we would like to see action. Reason being, the topic is security camera upgrades, and we have special pricing that technically our next board meeting would be after that pricing window closes. So we would like to see action on this. So what this is about is, if you remember back a few months ago, we were going through the contingency spend down process. What would we spend contingency dollars on? And one of those things to address school safety and security were camera upgrades, specifically camera upgrades at the elementary. Now that worked out well for 2 reasons. One, we can only spend at the elementary or on the field or in the PAC. That's the only place we could address these contingency dollars. But the other reason is they were the most outdated cameras, so it worked out very well. That's where we had the greatest need. Cameras are amazingly important, not just for addressing like external threats and being able to respond if there is a situation on campus, but also for investigating and looking at things that happen within the school. So it's very important to have decent cameras. So what this would allow us to do is include 29 high-def interior and exterior cameras, and the multi-sensor units, and then the management agreement, essentially. And this would be interior and exterior of the elementary school, as well as some on the walkway in front of the football stadium. And the total is, I think we're looking at $65,000. It's on the other document. We have the two quotes. The reason there's two quotes is we use Verkada as our system. We can't introduce another system without really complicating things. So we're bound to work with Verkada, and we're very happy with Verkada. The other side, though, is the installation. So that bid went to Five Star Telecom, and that's a small amount in the overall, but they would do the install for us if this were approved. This comes in about $25,000 less than estimated on the original contingency spend down, so we're pleased with that, very pleased with the pricing that Verkada offered. We were one of the first districts to go with Verkada, and we have early adopter pricing, which is helping us out a lot. So, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the security camera upgrades.
Motion by Steve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tricia. Any discussion? Questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I assume you're in favor, Corey? I'm sure he is.
Yeah, you said aye.
Corey, can you just clarify you're in favor? Corey?
Sorry, in favor.
Okay, very good. There's a little delay, I just want to be sure. Okay, any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Moving on, referendum planning. You want to run this conversation?
I sure can. Yeah, so the idea with this is just to give us a chance to talk about your response and reactions to what we learned on the survey. I know this is a relatively tight timeline, and we've been talking about it for a while, but it kind of sneaks up on you. And if we are going to pass a resolution to go to referendum in November, we need to do that by our second August meeting. Because we only have the 2 meetings a month, that only gives us 3 meetings between now and then. So it'd be helpful to go through and get a reaction to know general direction. Ideally, at our next meeting, I would love to have, and we'll put this on the agenda, a motion to pursue a referendum question. That doesn't mean we're authorizing a referendum at that point. That would be our team working with Chrissy, our attorney, and her firm does have bond counsel, which is the special area of law that helps craft and make sure that questions that go to referendum are legally compliant. It's very, very rule-bound and super specific. They do have that service, so they'd be able to help us out with that. So if we had that approval next time, we'd be able to get that question, still consider that question in August, and then vote for a resolution if we are or are not going to referendum. So that's sort of the timeline. But we thought, right now, we just had this conversation about the survey, so getting some of your feedback would be helpful. So what I'm gonna do is just read the question and then take notes. I won't really be involved in the conversation. I'll just take notes. I have a separate document that has the same question. So, that make sense?
Yep.
Do we want to take a break before this? Because now we're going to be asking questions for, just say yes, help them out.
Yes, okay. I'm good. Great. All right, let's take a 3-minute break.
Got me all excited.
Somebody else wants to go.
I need a refill. This is the point where I pour water all over myself trying to get the last bit. We don't want to do that again.
No, please.
Yep. All right, we are back.
All right. So we'll just go right into the questions. So first question, based on community's feedback regarding tax tolerance and priorities, what surprised you the most and where do you see the clearest alignment between the community's expectations and our district needs? And you can just jump in. Like I said, I'll take notes.
Anybody want to start?
I'm disappointed that there was not more support for the funds that we need to keep our public schools running, given the lack of funding from state and federal sources.
Anyone else? Thoughts?
That seems pretty accurate to me, that obviously there's a need to move forward. We don't want to go backwards. We want to move ahead and give us the best chance to be competitive, and we have to finance that somehow, so. And the appetite for going to the top, that's risky, but at least I think we're making progress. We get something done, so.
I agree with Steve. I expected the results to be this way. I expected that we'd get a nod for the lower dollar amount. I did not expect the upper two. And I think I go back to our past referendum, there was a question there about hockey. And there was responses that said, well, why would we build a hockey rink? We don't even have a hockey program. And I think that leans into, I think we do a great job with communication. Now, obviously, I'm very invested in the district, and kids are here, but there's clearly a breakdown somewhere in that outreach to those that aren't invested, right? So whether it's retired or just kids are gone, to ensure that we're connecting with them. So I think we can do a better job there somewhere. I don't know what it is. You know, I look at the 2 million, I saw, you know, that the end comments about the virtual academy. I mean, we've talked about that in this room for 2 years. And overwhelmingly, people said that's the lowest priority. Holy cow, because that's been a discussion all the time. So I think it helps level set with, you know, where we truly have to land and really focus on the priorities right now. So it is what I expected, actually.
And with retirees, they may own their home, but they're paying more and more taxes, and it's a concern, you know, fixed income, so it's understandable that there's restraint there. With valuations going up, you know, the taxes will continue to go up, so the burden goes up, so it's understandable, you know, for assessing that demographic.
And Matt, to your point, actually Alicia and I have talked about this quite a bit over the last couple of months, and then the admin team too. We've been talking about being more strategic with our mailings, because that is the best way we can communicate with those that aren't directly connected. Right now, we just do 2 mailings throughout the year. We do the calendar and a newsletter, but they end up being relatively close to one another. There's not a lot of time between them. We're going to shift our newsletter to a mid-year newsletter, and the calendar will come out at the beginning of the school year. There'll be a mid-year newsletter, and then there'll be another mailing at the end, which is really mainly a celebration of the district, but primarily a celebration of the graduates, because that's a very popular mailing. So we'll still keep the big things that people really enjoy, but pace it out a little bit differently. There's an investment that's associated with that, because another mailing, but based on everything we're hearing, we think it's the way to go.
I thought there was talk of Somerset Fire and Rescue also putting up, either needing to expand or
There is,
asking.
yeah.
Okay, so we have that too.
We do have that, yep.
There's no referendum tie. Isn't it all fundraising topic this time?
There would be, I believe, if the plan goes as I've heard, there would be a tax impact. I don't know how their funding mechanism works. I don't know if they're required to go to referendum. I'm not sure how that all works, or if it's just a vote. Not certain.
Interesting point. I completely forgot about that.
That's the thing.
Although even within that, like when the village annexing property and having a TIF district, although that's not increased funding, it just has people wondering about the tax situation. TIF districts make people nervous because you're deferring the taxes. I think it is a really good strategy to promote development, but not everyone understands that, so it's another thing that plays into that.
Other comments for him to go on question one? Corey, anything if you're still with us?
Yeah, I'm here, and, it's what I would expect too. I'd like to see a fall or winter survey. I think the big point to me is summertime, it's harder to get more engagement. I understand that, statistically, our number of 12% is accurate enough, but I think, if there's some positive promotion of some level of referendum and followed by a survey, and that survey, shows, good support, a lot more people would then be on board. A lot of people just aren't sure, I think, and when you're not sure about something, maybe you're less inclined to return a survey. So that's kind of my general opinion on it, but all in all, good that there's general support for something.
All right, so moving on to the next question. Looking at the data, what the community is willing to support financially versus our operational priorities, what do you see as the most viable sweet spot for referendum amount and scope? So this is sort of the big question. Wrote this before we knew what the survey results would be, but I mean, it seems sort of apparent, but let's throw it out there where you see the sweet spot, like what we'd be, if we were going to ask the community, what amount would we be talking about? And when I say that, I want to point one thing out. We gave 3 choices, right? Sometimes what districts will do is they'll try to thread the needle. And they'll say, oh, 1.4 was at 56%. Maybe we bump it up to 1.5 and see if we can, that is not advisable. 1.4 is what we said. We should not do anything different than, I would never advise do anything different than what we've already asked. Otherwise, it's going to look like we're playing a little shell game.
So we asked for 1.4.
And again, we're not committing to this right now, but just want to make sure if there's any conversation about any other options, we'd have it now. Saying that we didn't know if it would be like right on the edge, if there'd be more conversation. It seems like it's a pretty steep cliff after that 1.4. Any other ideas on that, or is that?
I agree with, it makes total sense with the statistics. 56% plus or minus 4 for margin of error, you're still gonna pass.
Yeah.
Which does not mean that we don't have to do our work.
No.
Right.
Absolutely not.
100%. And Corey brought that up too. If we go to resolution, so right now, legally the way this works is, I can say whatever I want. I could say that I'm all for and I think you should vote yes. I could say I'm totally against, you should vote no. Once there's a resolution, I can no longer do that. I can only communicate factually. Where that becomes a little bit goofy is we're suggesting that we think we need this. So even if I communicate just factually, it is going to appear as promotion, but I just have to be clear. I can't advise someone on how to vote. I can just be factual. So we would put together a communication campaign, which would include going to the different municipalities, going to different groups, being out there available for Q&A, but being very present and available to speak and also to answer questions that people have. That would certainly be part of it.
And I've been hearing from members of the community how important it is that board members are involved in that.
Yep.
There have been times in the past where it was solely the superintendent's responsibility, and that is not perceived by the community as convincing.
I would 100% agree. Yeah, because you all have people that trust you. So if you're out there, that's going to say something to people versus someone that's employed directly by the school district. Yeah, I think that's a good call.
I'm in agreement with 1.4 is no higher. Anything else for him on number 2?
So 3 is just a general question. What else do you need from me and from the team in terms of the information you need to feel that you have what you need to make a decision and to recommend a direction one way or the other? If there's anything else in terms of specific information, think we captured a couple. One is I'll get you the presentation from school perception, so you have that, and you can see that, and then when Darren does the video, we'll get that out as well. But anything else that you need in order to feel that you have what you need to cast a vote?
I know that when the surveys were sent out and talked about what the 1.4, the different levels of what would be used for, it'd be nice to have that out front
Okay.
too, to understand what would this be funding.
Yep.
I agree, I think clarity now, if there's a number, we pull out all the extra would-be nice stuff and just focus on.
Yep.
I did get a question though, about, people who got the survey at home would call and ask questions about things. And I didn't bring it with me tonight, so I don't have it exactly in front of me. But I got questions about the mental health and why wouldn't mental health be important? Why was that not included in the 1.4? So I think it's important that we clarify what we're doing, and that if we don't get this 1.4, we not only would not be able to add anything, but we would be looking at cutting our mental health supports.
So, yeah, and that, one thing that we should make clear, because it is a little bit goofy, because if you look at the way our budget shapes out, and the way we have an increasing deficit over the course of the years, at 1.4 million, those first few years, we'll have enough to be able to invest in some of those looming projects like roof repair and the emergency generator, some of those things, security cameras, we'll be able to get after some of that in those first couple of years, because the deficit is, or projected deficit, isn't as significant. But when we get to the end, that's no longer available. And at that point, yes, so in if this would play out, in year 5, all things being equal, if everything, all the variables stayed exactly the same, at that 5th year, we'd be talking about having to institute some of the cuts that we have outlined. And the mental health is an important one, because I think that one, obviously, it's an important topic, not just here, throughout the nation. It's a big issue. And what we were talking about more was additional resources, not the existing resources. When we talk about cuts, there are things that would be direct supports for student mental health that are on the list of things that we have to consider for cuts. But with that 1.4, we'd be able to maintain what we do. That's the core of that 1.4 is it's enough to maintain our current programming for the most part. And the reason I say that is, if one of two things happens. One, if we would increase enrollment, we would see more funding. And that would help fill that gap between that 1.4 and what the projected deficit is out several years. So that would help. If we don't increase enrollment, those numbers assume flat. So as we make some adjustments, we're going to naturally be able to right-size our staff, which will help have some reductions in place that don't reduce or eliminate programming. So that'll be part of the planning as well. As I mentioned before, once we have direction, we can get much more specific. Matt just mentioned you have all that other stuff, the kind of wish for list. We can ignore that and just focus on what would we actually do with this money, and we can spell out that list a little bit more specifically, because we're not limited to just communicating out something for a survey where you're very limited in the geography of how much paper you've got. So that would be part of the plan.
I think an important thing to market is the fact that, we got a 1-year bump, but then the mill rate will actually go down, years 2 through 5, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else for question 3 for him? That give you some guidance?
Yeah, that does. I appreciate that. If other things come up, just shoot me an email.
All right, number 5, topics for action. First up is the consent agenda. I didn't see any in the personnel update. Is there anything in there? No. Just the donation though?
Well, in the athletics activities, we had a resignation.
So I didn't see there either. I thought it was wrong.
Well, there it is, exits, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the athletics activities personnel update as presented, and the donation as presented.
Motion by Lori, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tricia. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to thank the Seibels for their donation. And can you provide any more information about exactly what this football coach has done?
Yep.
Do you know, Joe?
So I know that over the course of the last couple of years, once the plaza idea got going, to create the surface, the monuments, the flags, the electrical work, things that came up, that we have families that had pledged to support, and we have families that are coming forward to help make sure all that cost is covered. I don't know much deeper than that, honestly, but I know I believe that knowing Bob and Linda.
Well, I thought it was something in addition to what was.
I'm not aware of any current additions that are planned.
Okay.
Other than this is leveling things off so it's taken care of. That's my assumption at this level that I know about it.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up is item 6, general information. Our next meeting is July 20th. It's a regular session meeting with a listening session 30 minutes prior. And then item number 7 is district celebrations. Corey, can I start with you?
I would say I'm really appreciative for the production survey and I'm trying to work on promoting that.
Great. Thank you.
That's it for now.
Thank you. Steve?
Totally agree, ditto on that one.
Lori?
Last week was a break in summer school for the 4th of July holiday, and the last 2 weeks of summer school started today, going very well. The summer school play was performed at the Performing Arts Center the last Thursday of that 3rd week of summer school, and it was open to the public, and the kids just loved being on the stage for their performance versus Matt, when your kids were in middle school, they performed in the middle school library. So a huge change, and you can really see it in the kids. Tony Polfus and Rachel Erickson do this class those first 3 weeks of summer school, and they do a 2-hour class where the kids practice and perform the play, but they also do another 2-hour class where they have kids who are doing the set and the costumes, and they just did a great job. And they also had 2 middle school student directors. And they did work with the choreography, and Tony and Rachel said that they were a fabulous help, and it just all was a great experience for the kids involved and for the community.
Great, thank you. Tricia?
I've got nothing. Just got back from vacation, so catching up.
And
I don't have much either. I hope everybody had a happy, safe 4th of July.
I want to say thanks to all the staff that's here all summer long. I know, all the staff that have students get a little break, but you guys don't, and you guys put a ton of work in with school perceptions and this whole process. I'm excited to see what comes of this referendum. We're here to support you guys as best we can, but you're doing a ton of work, so thank you to all of you that are here every day. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Steve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tricia. All in favor?
All right.
Motion passes, meeting is